We salute these heroic officials on the front lines. As we continue to develop potential therapies, the FDA has recently begun a national effort to expand access to convalescent plasma donated from the blood of those who have recovered from the virus. The blood of these donors contains antibodies that can potentially reduce the severity of the illness in those who are sick, and frankly, those that are very sick. Nearly 3,000 patients are now enrolled in the expanded access program, receiving transfusions nationwide. And I want to thank all of the people that recovered for what they've done. They, as I said yesterday, they raise their hand when they barely can walk, and they're saying, I want to donate blood, I want to donate whatever it is that you want, because we want to help people. It's really quite incredible. Convalescent plasma will also be used to manufacture a concentrated antibody treatment that does not have to be matched with a particular blood type. This concentrated antibody treatment could be used as a preventative measure to keep healthcare workers and other high-risk populations from contracting the virus in the first place. Very big deal. Clinical trials of these products are slated to begin within weeks, and we can maybe have a fairly quick solution. I urge Americans to get in there and keep doing what you're doing, because again, we want those people recovering or recovered from coronavirus to contact their local blood and plasma donation center to learn how they can help. And they've been so great, and I just appreciate it. My administration has also partnered with leading, and we have really been establishing some great partnerships with leading technology companies and scientific journals to create a database of 52,000 scholarly articles on the virus that can be analyzed by artificial intelligence. Top AI experts are now using this wealth of data to gain insights into potential therapies, and we're collaborating with tech firms, universities, and our national labs to harness American supercomputers in the search for treatments and vaccines. That search is going on, and it's being, I think you'll see in the future, you'll see it's very successful. Ultimately, it'll be a tremendous success. Great progress is being made at a rapid pace, a pace like no other. We have every hope that with the full might and resources of American science and technology, and with the courage and devotion of the American people who have been so incredible, we will end this plague, and together we will restore the full measure of American strength and power and prosperity. Our country is going to do fantastically well. You see what's going on. There is a pent-up demand in our country to get it back right where it was, and maybe even better, and that's what's going to happen. So with that, I'd like to ask Mike Pence to come up, Vice President, say a few words, please, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon. Today, the White House Coronavirus Task Force met, and while our hearts are with the families of those who have lost their life to the coronavirus and those who are struggling with serious illness today, our team, led by Dr. Deborah Birx, informs us that the data continues to show promising signs of progress. The New York metro area, New Jersey, Connecticut, Detroit, and New Orleans all appear to be past their peak, and we are seeing consistent declines in hospitalization and cases in regions across the country. Our only conclusion is that we're getting there, America, because the American people have put into practice the President's guidelines of social distancing, because you've been listening and adhering to the guidance of state and local officials. We're making meaningful progress, in a very real sense, sparing Americans to be exposed to the coronavirus, and in no less extent, saving lives. Our task force actually believes, Mr. President, that if we continue these mitigation efforts in the days ahead, as states implement their policies, including phased reopening that will preserve those gains, we do believe by early summer we could be in a much better place as a nation, with much of this coronavirus epidemic behind us. Earlier today, we also had a conference call led by Secretary Ben Carson and leaders from HUD about the President's announcement yesterday that he is repurposing the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council to focus on the impact of the coronavirus on minority communities. Secretary Carson will convene the council tomorrow and will be reporting tomorrow afternoon on their progress. We want to thank the more than 270 leaders of organizations dedicated to housing, homelessness, and improving the lives of people across our urban communities, not only for being with us today, for the way they have partnered with our administration and partnered with state and local officials to put the health of all of their constituencies first. As the President mentioned, you'll receive a report that our task force received formally this week from Bill Bryant of the Science and Technology Directorate at the Department of Homeland Security. He will outline, as the President said, encouraging news about the impact that heat and sunlight have on the coronavirus, which will increase the confidence that we feel about the coming summer. On the subject of testing, at the present moment, we have reports of 4.93 million tests having been performed across America, and encouraging news as states have been engaging commercial labs at a higher level across the country. Yesterday, our commercial lab system did more than 100,000 tests in a single day. So we're beginning to activate all of the capacity. And tomorrow, at the President's direction, our task force will convene a conference call with all of the nation's governors to talk about their progress that they are making on testing, and we're going to hear from governors about the practices and methods that they are employing to significantly increase testing following our briefing about capacity in laboratories this past Monday. For instance, Governor Mike DeWine just announced that Ohio's testing has been greatly expanded after the FDA approved Thermo Fisher's new extraction reagent, saying in his words that the action, quote, probably doubled, maybe even tripled testing in Ohio virtually overnight. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota announced, along with the state's healthcare system, the Mayo Clinic, and the University of Minnesota, what he described as a breakthrough for rapid, widespread testing. He was able to test more than 20,000 people using a molecular test per day. Governor Kim Reynolds of Iowa launched the Test Iowa initiative that will triple testing capacity by partnering with Nomi Health and Domo. She also worked with the University of Iowa hospitals to leverage further capacity. And Governor Eric Holcomb and Governor Andy Beshear of Indiana and Kentucky, respectively, both announced additional drive-through testing locations. Our priority has always been to focus first on those impacted by the coronavirus and then on those extraordinary healthcare workers ministering to their needs every day. And I know, Mr. President, how proud you are that our men and women in uniform have come alongside our healthcare workers in communities most impacted. And I know the American people are proud as well. As of today, FEMA reports that 35,000 National Guard have been deployed across the country to aid in our coronavirus response. Governor Kevin Stitt of Ohio actually deployed the National Guard to hospitals across the state to evaluate protective equipment and hospital capacity and report it into state emergency management and FEMA. And Governor Greg Abbott of Texas actually mobilized more than 1,200 National Guard and 45 teams to provide greater access to testing. Along with the National Guard, at the President's direction today, more than 4,500 active duty military doctors, nurses, and medical assistants have been deployed across the country. Yesterday, 1,013 medical professionals in our military were actually deployed to 19 hospitals in 7 states to support those amazing healthcare workers. And with 4.4 million more Americans filing for unemployment in the past week, I joined the President in welcoming passage in the House today of the Paycheck Protection Program. It'll support working families, allow small businesses to keep people on the payroll for a period of 2 months. But it also, as the President requested, included $75 billion to assist hospitals across the country. And in that spirit, the President and I will continue to urge states across the country, given the unique burden on hospitals, we are now encouraging states to restart elective surgeries wherever possible, either statewide or on a county-by-county basis. We recognize the role elective surgeries play in finances for local hospitals, and we'll be working with states to enable that. In that vein, Governor Doug Ducey issued an executive order not long ago allowing elective surgeries beginning May 1 for hospitals that meet certain preparedness criteria. and Indiana's Governor Eric Holcomb is allowing elective clinical procedures to begin on April 21st. Finally, Mr. President, the task force received today our first report on state reopening plans. At the present moment, 16 states have released formal reopening plans. 13 of those were actually released since you unveiled the Opening Up America guidelines to our governors and to the nation last week. And to your point, Mr. President, states are beginning to make those plans. And we're encouraged to see so many states embracing the phased approach to reopening their economies that's contemplated in our guidelines for opening up America again. For instance, Governor Mike Parson of Missouri announced the Show Me Strong Recovery Plan as 2 initial phases intended to protect the most at risk. Governor Tom Wolf announced the plan for Pennsylvania that would begin May 8th, will end a stay-at-home order for just portions of Pennsylvania, but the plan again requires regions to have fewer than 50 new positive cases per 100,000 for a period of 14 days, and it also lays out a phased reopening roadmap. Governor Kate Brown of Oregon updated their framework for reopening, doing 3 phases again on a county-by-county basis, and Governor Brad Little of Idaho released Rebound Idaho in just the last few days that will consist of 4 phases and require specific criteria that Idaho and businesses need to meet to begin to reopen. Mr. President, with the guidelines to open up America again, states are making plans, and at your direction, our task force will continue to work very closely, providing them with the data, providing them with the resources to be able to implement those plans in a safe and responsible way. So with that, let me just end where I began and to say thank you to the American people. The progress that we are seeing is a testament to what all of you have done, to our extraordinary healthcare workers. A partnership between the federal government and to state and local officials. And I'm confident it's also owing to the prayers of millions of Americans each and every day. All of that combined, we're slowing the spread. We're protecting the most vulnerable. We're saving lives. And every single day, we are one day closer to opening up America again. With that, Mr. President, I'd be pleased to call the bill forward. Bill Bryant leads the Science and Technology Directorate at the Department of Homeland Security, and now will make a presentation on their recent study.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity to do this today. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bill Bryant, and I lead the Science and Technology Directorate at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Over the last several months, we've intensified the department's R&D efforts to identify and deliver information that informs our response to COVID-19. S&T is working to identify, develop, deploy the tools and information to support our response to this crisis. As part of our efforts, we're leveraging the unique capabilities of S&T's National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasures Center to study the biology of the COVID-19 virus. This center is a high biocontainment laboratory located in Frederick, Maryland. It was established in the early 2000s in response to the Amerithrax attacks, and where we study, characterize, analyze, and develop countermeasures for biological threats to the homeland. We work closely with the CDC, FDA, HHS, and also our Department of Defense colleagues and many others. Yesterday, I shared the emerging results of our work that we're doing now with the Coronavirus Task Force. And today, I would like to share certain trends that we believe are important. If I may have the first slide, please. And while that's coming up, our most striking observation to date is the powerful effect that solar light appears to have on killing the virus, both surfaces and in the air. We've seen a similar effect with both temperature and humidity as well, where increasing the temperature and humidity, or both, is generally less favorable to the virus. So let me illustrate with this first slide. If you look to the right, you'll see that term half-life with a bunch of timestamps on there. First, let me tell you what a half-life is. We don't measure the virus as far as how long we'll live on the surface. We have to measure the decay of the virus in terms of its half-life, because we don't know certain elements. We don't know how much a person expectorates when he spits, right? When he sneezes, whatever the case may be, we don't know how much a virus is in there. So that has a bearing on how long the virus is going to be alive and active. So we measure it in half-life, because half-life doesn't change. So if you look at an 18-hour half-life, what you're basically saying is that every 18 hours, the virus the life of the virus is cut in half. So if you start with 1,000 particles of the virus, in 18 hours you're down to 500, in 18 hours after that you're down to 250, and so on and so forth. That's important as I explain the rest of the chart. If you look at the first 3 lines, when you see the word surface, we're talking about non-porous surfaces, door handles, stainless steel. And if you look at as the temperature increases and as the humidity increases with no sun involved, you can see how drastically the half-life goes down on that virus. So the virus is dying at a much more rapid pace just from exposure to higher temperatures and just from exposure to humidity. If you look at the 4th line, you inject the sunlight into that, you inject UV rays into that, the same effects on line 2 at 70 to 75 degrees with 80% humidity on the surface, and look at line 4, but now you inject the sun, the half-life goes from 6 hours to 2 minutes. That's how much of an impact the UV rays has on the virus. The last 2 lines are aerosols. What does it do in the air? We have a very unique capability. I was discussing this with the president prior to coming out. He wanted me to convey it to you on how we do this. I believe we're the only lab in the country that has this capability. But if you can imagine a Home Depot bucket, a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket, we're able to take a particle, and this was developed and designed by our folks at the NBAC. We're able to take a particle of the virus and suspend it in the air inside of this drum and hit it with various temperatures, various humidity levels, multiple different kinds of environmental conditions to include sunlight. And we're able to measure the decay of that virus while it's suspended in the air. This is how we do our aerosol testing. We work with Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and we actually developed a larger drum to do actually more testing. That's 4 times the size of that. So this is the capability that we bring to this effort. So in summary, within the conditions we've tested to date, the virus in droplets of saliva survives best in indoors and dry conditions. The virus does not survive as well in droplets of saliva, and that's important because a lot of testing being done is not necessarily being done, number 1, with the COVID-19 virus, and number 2, in saliva or respiratory fluids. And thirdly, the virus dies the quickest in the presence of direct sunlight under these conditions. And when you look at that chart, look at the aerosol as you breathe it. You put it in a room, 70 to 75 degrees, 20% humidity, low humidity. It lasts, the half-life is about an hour. But you get outside and it cuts down to a minute and a half. Very significant difference when it gets hit with UV rays. Mr. President, while there are many unknown links in the COVID-19 transmission chain, we believe these trends can support practical decision making to lower the risks associated with the virus. If I could have my next slide, and while that comes up, you'll see a number of some practical applications. For example, increasing the temperature and humidity of potentially contaminated indoor spaces appears to reduce the stability of the virus. And extra care may be warranted for dry environments that do not have exposure to solar light. We're also testing disinfectants, readily available. We've tested bleach, we've tested isopropyl alcohol on the virus, specifically in saliva or respiratory fluids. And I can tell you that bleach will kill the virus in 5 minutes. Isopropyl alcohol will kill the virus in 30 seconds, and that's with no manipulation, no rubbing, just spraying it on and leaving it go. You rub it and it goes away even faster. We're also looking at other disinfectants, specifically looking at the COVID-19 virus in saliva. This is not the end of our work as we continue to characterize this virus and integrate our findings into practical applications to mitigate exposure and transmission. I would like to thank the President, thank the Vice President for their ongoing support and leadership to the Department and for their work in addressing this pandemic. I would also like to thank the scientists, not only in S&T and the NBAC, but to the larger scientific and R&D community. Thank you very much.
Ryan. Mr. Ryan.
Thank you very much. So I asked Bill a question that probably some of you are thinking of if you're totally into that world, which I find to be very interesting. So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that? By injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of levels, so it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors, but it sounds interesting to me. And so we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it goes in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful. Steve, please.
The country will be in a better place by early summer. Does that mean you're going to need to extend the social distancing guidelines until then?
Well, we may go beyond that. We're going to have to see where it is, and I think people are going to know. You're going to know. I'm going to know. I think people are going to know just out of common sense. At some point, we won't have to do that, but until we feel it's safe, we're going to be extending.
You have 23 cases where 23 states where new cases are on decline. What does that mean about when the country can be safely reopened to a more normal point?
Yeah, but it means we're going to watch those cases very carefully. I think we've all gotten very good at it. We've gotten good at tracing. We see where the cases are, where they're going, and we're going to be watching it, and it's called containment. At a certain point, we're going to be able to contain. And, when you see this, a lot of people have been talking about summer. Maybe this is one of the reasons. I once mentioned that maybe it does go away with heat and light, and people didn't like that statement very much. The fake news didn't like it at all, and I just threw it out as a suggestion. But it seems like that's the case, because when it's on a surface that would last for a long time, when that surface is outside, it goes away very quickly. It dies very quickly with the sun. Yeah, go ahead.
You said yesterday that you're going to look into Senator McConnell's suggestion for allowing states to declare bankruptcy versus the aid.
Yeah, we'll look into it, and I have been looking into it. I've been talking to a lot of the different senators, but I don't want to talk about it now. That was a very interesting presentation. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I wanted to talk about McConnell's suggestion that aid to the states amounts to a...
I just told you I'm not talking about it now. I'll talk about it later. I'd like to talk about something that right now is of more interest to people.
Could I ask Mr. Bryan a question?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. When you started your presentation, you described this as an emerging result. Does this mean your study is conclusive? Is there more work to do?
We're continuing that. For example, on the aerosol side, you notice the figures were 20% humidity. We're looking at higher humidity levels. We would expect that we even have a greater impact on the virus. We're looking at other types of disinfectants. And so this is we're, as a scientific community, we're continuing to study the virus to understand its characteristics.
And
Mr. Bryan, can you explain why some hot spots we've seen in the U.S. are hot and humid, like New Orleans, for example?
Let me explain. If you look at the coronavirus as a chain with many links, what we've done through our study is we've identified some of the weak links in that chain that the transmission of the virus depends upon. We identified that heat and humidity is a weakness in that chain. We've identified that sunlight, solar light, UV rays is a weakness in that chain. That doesn't take away the other activities, the guidance from the White House, the guidance from the CDC and others on the actions and steps that people need to take to protect themselves. This is just another tool in our tool belt, right? Another weapon in the fight that we can add to it. And in the summer, we know that summer-like conditions are going to create an environment where the transmission can be decreased, and that's an opportunity for us to get ahead.
But so, the president mentioned the idea of cleaners, bleach and isopropyl alcohol. There's no scenario that could be injected into a person, is there?
No, I'm here to talk about the findings that we had in the study. We don't do that within that lab in our labs.
So how do you...
It wouldn't be through injection. We're talking about almost a complete sterilization of an area. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, but it certainly has a big effect if it's on a stationary object.
Okay.
So how do
Are we simplifying too much by saying that it'd be better with the warmer weather and the sun coming out more and more, that people would be outside than staying inside their home, confined to the four walls of the house?
It would be irresponsible for us to say that we feel that the summer is just going to totally kill the virus and that it's a free-for-all and that people ignore those guides. That is not the case. We have an opportunity, though, to get ahead with what we know now and factor that into the decision makings for what opens and what doesn't.
But he's saying on surfaces, the heat, the hot summer, and whatever other conditions, humidity and lack of humidity, that would have an impact. So that on surfaces where it can be picked up, it will die fairly quickly in the summer, whereas in the winter it wouldn't die so quickly.
Yes, Mr. President. When it's exposed to UV rays, take a playground equipment, for example. The UV rays hitting a piece of playground equipment will kill the virus when it hits on the playground equipment. But underneath, where the sun does not get, if someone touched that and had it on their hands, it could still be there. Right? It has to be in direct light of UV rays.
With the sun, if it's on somebody's hands, right? If they haven't touched their face at all.
If it's exposed to the sun,
Yeah, but if they're outside, right, and their hands are exposed to the sun, will that kill it as though it were a piece of metal or something else?
I don't want to say it will at the same rate because it's a non-porous surface. What we do know is that we looked at the worst case scenario, and the virus lives longer on non-porous surfaces. So porous surfaces, it doesn't live quite as long. So in theory, what you said is correct.
This is sort of semi-non-porous, right?
Yes, Mr. President.
Wait. How should governors who are opening their states working on that incorporate the findings of this study into those guidelines?
I would leave that up to the governors. This is a decision. This factors into their decision process. As I mentioned, with knowing this knowledge and having this knowledge, as we continue to study and further know what the virus does and how it reacts, it could impact the way a governor will look at what he opens in a state, how he opens it, in what environments these things are opened up. But I leave that up to the governors to make that decision.
Obviously, at the moment, the advice is stay at home. By the summer, could we be flipping that and saying you'd be much better off being outside with UV rays, all the humidity that Washington brings in August?
I would not go contrary to the guidance that have been issued right now. I think, though, to tell you that if I'm having an event with my family, I'm doing it in the driveway or in the backyard, not inside the house with my children.
In fact, I'm thinking about moving outside to the rose garden. No, it's a very interesting question, actually. Okay.
How much more research, how much more time would it take to have conclusive results that could be used here? You said these were emerging results.
We first were able to receive the virus back in February is when we started testing. And it is a science-based approach. Science is a process. The doctor can attest to that. It doesn't necessarily line up with goals and targets and other things. It is what it is. But we are now starting to get results. And we're every week or 2 weeks, we're starting to find out something new and something different. And in talking to the task force and the vice president, he's already asked us to come to him every time we come up with some new discoveries that we could share with the public.
Yeah, sir, have you compared notes with your counterparts in other foreign governments or in private industry who might have been studying the same thing, and do their findings show the same result that you found here?
We do have a very good partnership with a lot of our allies. We work closely with them on this particular topic. We actually authored a document called the Master Questions List. If you go to DHS-S&T's website, we've already had about 17,000 hits on this document. It actually outlines what all the countries in the world are doing to fill the certain gaps of knowledge that don't exist within the virus. And what we do know, and that is really what targets and drives the science community to say, oh, what don't we know now? So we don't duplicate what other people have done. So we've championed that document. It's well referenced, and I would encourage you to look at that.